Welcome, CvCISO Podcast listeners. This is episode 33 of the CvCISO Podcast. I should speak much faster. If I speak really, really fast, then everybody will think, oh my God, he knows so much stuff. But does he? I don't know. Anyway.
Then they're going to slow down the playback. And
right.
We're going to sound very slow.
Yeah, I wonder how many people listen to the podcast on like 1.5x. Because I've been told I talk too slow. I like to.
That can't be true.
I know people listen to you recording.
I feel like you're fast.
Did you say fast or fat?
Both.
Yeah, it's true. I am both. Thank you for noticing. All right, so Meg, you are with us. Hi, Meg.
I am. Hello, world.
Yes. Meg, you're looking radiant today.
Dapper.
You like the sun kind of glaring in on my left here with the open window?
And the roses or the flowers match your hair and your glow.
Wow. Yeah. How about your nails? What color are your nails today?
My nails are...
That matches the flowers too.
Oh my goodness, the whole thing. The whole ensemble.
She is a package deal. I was just before you got on, Jordan, I was giving Meg crap because her husband comes down here. I mean, the audacity of this guy, right? He comes down here, beats me in every game we play. Right? And then,
that's not right.
But the fact that I beat him too, it's just my husband.
Of course. The whole parent family comes down here and just kicks your ass, and they're like, hey, we can still be friends though, right? And I'm like, fuck no, we can't be friends. I just do
We're talking about pool, ping pong.
Yes, not ping pong. Pool
bags.
And bags. But I did beat them in euchre. Last minute go solo. They were up 8-2. We came back and beat them 10-8. But that's cards. There's no skill in that.
Solo lower hand in the last round and went up and beat us in because of this solo freaking hand.
You know who my partner was, Jordan? And my partner was Matt Goodacre. He sucks at games more than I do. Just saying.
That's a fact.
I love the guy. I really do. He's a fantastic person. I hope he doesn't find any self-worth in his ability to play games. Because
Matt.
If he did find any of his self-worth in that, in not just playing, but winning, we need to get him help right away.
Matt, work on your euchre and bags and your pools.
And pool. And billiards.
I think it's clear that he doesn't find his self-worth, because I tried to give him feedback on the way he was throwing his bags, and he was very comfortable with the way he did.
Good. That's good. All right, and Jordan's here. You heard Jordan's voice? Jordan, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Happy to be here.
Friday. Today's Friday. So we're going to pick up where we left off. We were doing an assessment, and I think we started with administrative controls. For those of you who are new to this and haven't been in the Security Studio tool, haven't done vCISO stuff, CvCISO stuff, the S2 tool, the Security Studio tool, is one of the tools that we use to enable vCISOs, I think, to do a great job, depending on how you use it. It's like any other tool, right? If you suck at using the tool, then that's what happens. But if you're good at it, then I think there's a good opportunity to really serve your customers well. The Security Studio tool, in my opinion, just as a guy who's kind of critical on stuff, it's a good utility tool. It's not meant to be bells and whistles on everything and flashy and blinky and automated. It's meant to be an effective, it's like a hammer, right? I don't see a lot of sexy hammers. Hammers, but you need a hammer sometimes. I mean, if you're going to be pounding nails. All right, so we left off the first one in this series. Jordan, you were the assessor. I think I was the CEO and Meg was the CFO. And then we switched. Last week, Meg was the assessor or the vCISO. I think I was the CEO maybe, and Jordan, you were the CEO. No, Jordan, you were the CEO and I was the CFO.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because I really suck with money. So in that business, we would have run that shit into the ground for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we have a healthier business today to assess. I'm going to be the vCISO. I'm going to start with Section 5.1, Access Control Policy. Meg is going to be the CEO. And just knowing Meg, she's a ball buster.
Mm-hmm.
Shit's going to get tough today. As a vCISO, chances are really good. I'm going to feel intimidated, small, You feel like that sometimes as you're the vCISO. Actually, I'm not small. I mean, Jordan just pointed it out. I'm fat. I'm large.
PH, Evan, PH.
Is that like this new generation speaky thing you're doing to me right now?
That's from our generation, man.
Is it really?
Or ours, yeah. I think are you a generation before me, probably?
I'm 53. How old are you?
45, 44. Almost 45.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
I'm what they call Zennial, I think.
Zennial.
Hey, how much older are you than me?
I'm an old fart. I'm 59. I'll be 60 in May.
Okay. Did they have PH fat when you were younger?
I don't remember that. But hey, I'm sure it is somewhere. I don't always pay
Pretty hot and
attention.
tempting. That's what PHAT, pretty hot and tempting. That's what it was.
All right.
Pretty hot.
For those.
Jordan might have hung out with the cool crowd in school. You know?
Jordan's in his own little world.
I was the cool crowd. Me and me just hanging out.
Yeah, he was that clique. He was like, man, they're trendsetters. They're wearing like the coolest Benetton clothes, Girbaud jeans. I mean, man, someday.
The fact that you even know that, like the name of jeans, it's cracking me up.
Did you have Girbaud jeans when you were?
I don't even know what that is.
Girbaud jeans?
My parents wouldn't. Only if they found them at a garage sale did I have them.
Those were all the shit when I was in high school. Girbaud jeans. It had a white tag like this on the zipper line. I mean, you have the zipper, and then you have that flap that goes over it.
Right.
Under the flap on the zipper thing was this white tag. So you couldn't see it if you were wearing them, but that was kind of a tell for Girbaud jeans. But I think back in the 80s, late 80s, they were $50, which was a lot of money.
A lot of money. Yeah.
You know, we'll get onto the assessment, but the funny story is I was a troubled child and an only child. So my parents oftentimes they tried to send me to therapy. Like, fix our kid. What the fuck's wrong with him? And I thought it was funny, most of the time, because I don't know, just thought it was funny. So my parents would take me to this therapist by Ridgedale, which Ridgedale is in Minnetonka. And the therapist was across the street from Ridgedale. So you had Highway 12 that runs there, and you have some businesses up there. And then across the street is Ridgedale. Ridgedale had a Dayton's, and Dayton's carried Girbaud jeans, and I wanted Girbaud jeans. So my mother would drop me off at the therapist and give me cash to pay the bill. Right?
God.
Exactly. You look back at it and she's got to be thinking, oh my God, what the hell was I doing? So she would give me cash to go into the therapist. I would wait for her to be off in the distance, and then I would take that cash, go across the street to Dayton's and buy myself Girbaud jeans.
Nice.
Brilliant.
How long before your mom found out?
It was 3 episodes. There are 3 sessions. Because she would ask me, how did it go today? I'm like, I feel like I've been therapied. I got some good therapy today, Mom. Thanks.
Wasn't it jeans?
No. Yeah, exactly. Well, I had to wear one pair of jeans over the top of the other pair of jeans, to hide it. And then that was the 3rd time when the therapist or whatever had called my mother and like, is Evan going to be coming in, or did you guys cancel? And my mom's like, what? He's been there. And she said, no, he hasn't been here. So yeah, that's when.
My gosh,
what
you
a
got busted.
snitch.
Hand in the cookie jar.
But who came away with 5 pair of new Girbaud jeans?
Oh, man.
5 pair. And so who was PHAT that day? Evan was fat. The PH.
I'm more interested in how your mom handled it.
You were down here when my mom was here?
Yeah. I had the pleasure of meeting your mom.
Yeah. Does she seem a little off to you?
No, I loved your mom. She was awesome. She reminded me of my mom, like, to the T.
Okay. Because she is a little off, and I'm the reason for it.
Well, she was, you could not create a more carbon copy of the personality of my mom than your mom.
I love my mom dearly, and I'm actually really, really proud of her. She, like last week, she sent me a message. She got a smishing, of text. And she sent me a message like, do I dare or whatever? And I replied back to her, no, Mom, this is a this is a scam and here are the reasons. And, you know, it is a scam in the way I know. Sorry, I had to cough. And then she replied back, you know, thank you for letting me know. If I hadn't asked you, I probably would have done it. And I'm like, I'm so proud of you right now. So that inspired, I want to do an elderly campaign. How many elderly fall victim to scams and either you don't know about it because they're too ashamed to share it with anybody? You know, I felt really happy that my mom wasn't too ashamed to ask me. And I think even if she had fallen for the attack, I don't think she'd be too ashamed to share that either.
Yeah. Jordan, hasn't the local community talked about doing something for the elderly too?
Yeah, we've talked about that and the younger generation too.
The CvCISO community?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome. Yeah, because I think I have an advantage because my mom obviously knows what I do for a living.
Yeah.
So she just knew that was the right place to go. But, you know, for people that aren't in this industry, you know, or, you know, whatever, you know, what things can we do to arm our elderly folks, you know, to protect themselves?
Yeah.
And if they do fall victim, the last thing you fucking want to do is victim shame them. They didn't grow up with this stuff, right? I like victim shaming the younger generation.
And they tend
They
to be
grew up-
more trusting.
Well, the younger generation grew up with this stuff, you know,
Right.
and they're a little bit more resilient when it comes to technology stuff. All right, anyway, we've got an assessment to do. Let's just get to it for crying out loud. I'm going to push this button here. I'm going to push this button here. I'm going to share my entire screen because I'm very giving, I guess. So there you go. This is 5.1 access control policy, right? So I'm going to pick it up like you and I, like we've been here already, right? We've gotten through these first sections. So it's a new day. Here we are.
We just had a bathroom break.
A bathroom
There you
break.
go.
Yeah, because my prostate is enlarged.
And suddenly the CEO is a woman named Meg.
No, all right, anyway, here we are. Okay, so Meg, it's good to see you again today. Hopefully, did you have any questions about anything that we've covered so far? So we've gone through things like risk management, some roles and responsibilities. We talked about inventory, classification. Anything come up? Did you have any questions on anything we've covered so far?
No, I'm good. We've been cruising along and everything's going well. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Have you found this useful so far? Do you want me to speed up, slow down a little bit, explain more, or should we just continue at the same pace?
I think the same pace is going good.
Okay. Well, the next section for us to talk about is access control policy. So there's multiple types of access, but the two primary ones are physical access and logical access, right? So physical access would be like access to the building, through the doors, you know, things like that, restricted areas. And then the logical access is things like access to your computer, access to applications, you know, that sort of stuff. So today, do you have any formal policy or direction around access control?
You know, in that stack of policies that we've talked about that's kind of up on a shelf somewhere, I'm sure there's something in there, but you know, how recently we've made changes or even looked at it, that remains to be unknown.
Okay. So it's safe to say you have something, but you may not be following it. Is that safe?
Correct.
Or fair? Okay.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
We do have some security cameras up in the front of the building.
Okay.
Does that count?
Yeah. I mean, everything counts. Cameras would be more of a detective type of control. So it's certainly related to access control, but it's not like a preventative control, like a door lock or, you know, security guard, right?
I see.
So you're definitely on the right track. I think it's just a different type and different application of the control. So we talked a little bit about policy. How about, do you know how when somebody, let's say somebody requests access to something, right? I need access to an application, database, whatever. How does that process work? So I might be the requester. Is there somebody else who then approves the access and then maybe even a third person who applies the access control changes? How does that process work in your company?
And that's really done through our IT department. I'd have to reference them, but it seems like they run a pretty tight ship. So I would
Nobody should
assume
have access to the accounting folder except for me and the people on my team.
Okay. Is it safe to say that there's always probably at least two people involved in access control? Somebody who asks for it, and maybe it's IT who grants it. Is that fair?
that's
Usually,
fair.
Can you think of a place where that doesn't happen?
usually it happens on onboarding. Someone gets hired, and like we said in the past, we have a pretty good onboarding and offboarding procedure. So usually the access gets granted there. A ticket, onboarding ticket goes to the IT team, and usually
That
they'll
doesn't make
reach
sense.
out. At least for my team, they'll reach out to me for approval of the access granted there.
Okay. So there's somebody. Okay, that's good enough. That's good to know. Because what we're really looking for there is like, I don't have the ability as a user to request access and grant myself access to a lot of things, right? We keep hopefully a pretty tight ship around these privileged accounts. Going back to what we talked about, yesterday, we talked about privileged accounts. A privileged account would be an account that has those kind of rights that can apply access control changes. But I think based on what we talked about yesterday and what we're talking about now, I think it's fair to say that there is some segregation of duties between a requester and a grantor. And as you really formalize that, you've got a requester, an approver, and a grantor. But in a smaller company like this, I think just having some segregation, and to circle back, when I talked about policy, at some point, we probably want to govern this process with a policy so that everybody's on the same page with how we're doing this.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that after we're done with the assessment and kind of see where we're at for the risk decision-making stuff. Sound good?
Okay.
Any questions on
Yeah.
that?
That's good. No,
Yeah.
I'm
Are you
good.
aware? Okay. Are you aware of any times where there's a review of access? So, every so often it might make sense to do just a reconciliation of your user accounts to make sure that when somebody's no longer with the organization, that account has been removed or disabled, and that the access rights that we've granted to user accounts as people change roles within the organization, it still fits. Are you aware of whether your IT team or if anybody in the organization does this periodic sort of review of user accounts?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that review. I don't think that we're far enough along in, our program to have something that's really defined.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, when we started here, it was, we want to identify what we're doing right, identify what we're not doing as right, and then, figure out where to go from there. So I appreciate the transparency, and it's good, right? It's the more I think the more truthful we are in the assessment, the better the results are going to be, and the more, you're going to be able to rest.
Yeah, I can say for my team, like I said, I feel good about the onboarding and offboarding process. There's good checklists there, but I've never been brought in to review, the permissions on the accounting folder.
Okay, good to know. How about the use of shared user accounts? Are you aware of any place in the environment where people share accounts, share logins, share passwords?
There might be something there with facilities, but for the most part, I think we're really good at not sharing accounts. I think we know enough to not do that, but with facilities, people kind of come and go, and they have different, they work on different shifts. So sometimes I think they share accounts, but I'm not 100% on that.
What about when we have someone filling in for someone when they're gone? Someone's sick and someone needs to access their stuff.
Well, there's two ways to do it. I think you could share the account. Another one would be to just grant that other person who's going to be doing that stuff, grant them the permissions to access those things, temporarily, and then roll them back when that other person comes back. So the latter way is the more secure way to do it. But I think, sometimes the former way, just sharing a user account, is easier, right? It's always that trade-off between convenience and security. So I think if you did do that, something to feel guilty about, but it's just a risk that we want to identify and address potentially later on. So the use of shared accounts, are we aware of any place where it's documented or communicated that that's prohibited by the organization, or is it just kind of generally understood?
Yeah, I'm sure that's in the policy. I'm sure that's probably written there somewhere. But again, because we haven't been very diligent with our policy renewals and reviews, it might just be lost in the shuffle.
Okay. Well, where I'm going to go with this is, for now, I'm going to answer this as it's not prohibited by the organization just because it's not formal, right? This is a thing that we probably want to be clearer, and marking it false right now allows us to circle back on this and revisit this later, maybe with better context. And if we need to check in with IT, we can do that. So if we get done with the assessment and you find out, but it is prohibited by the organization, you marked it false and it's actually true, this is why I'm doing it, so that we can come back and revisit it and yeah.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. So system and service accounts, and you may not be aware of what these are. Do you know what system and service accounts are?
No.
Okay. Which is totally normal for a CEO and a CFO. Your IT folks, hopefully they do, and we can check back with them later. So a system or service account, when you have like an application that's installed on a system and it requires access to things on that system, whether it be files, memory, database, whatever, it'll use a system account or a service account to do that, right? So it's not an account that you and I would log in with. Generally, it's an account that the application uses to perform some function. Now, that may seem like whatever. The risk here is a lot of times these accounts are privileged accounts. So as an attacker, if I was able to compromise one of these privileged service or system accounts, I could cause a lot of damage to the organization. So that's why we're asking about it. And a lot of times when we're talking about this security stuff, it can seem kind of nitpicky. Like, why are you asking these nitpicky type questions? It's because of that.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we're not missing anything. So the question, or what I'm looking for here, is, do we have an inventory of system service accounts? And has it been reviewed, like the user accounts, but these system and service accounts, do we know if they're inventoried or if they're reviewed?
I don't know that they're inventoried or reviewed, and I'm just curious, how would we figure out how many system service accounts we have and what they're doing?
That's a good question. And that goes back to when we talked about roles and responsibilities. I would never expect the CEO of the organization or the CFO to do this inventory of service accounts. But we want to ensure that IT is, right? That they're kind of doing the things that we expect them to do. So on the roles and responsibilities side, we would define it, who should be doing this, and then we give them the direction that they need to make sure that they're doing what we're asking. So on this one, I'm going to check with IT, the IT team, just to see what they're doing here. Yeah, and you'll be aware. Sound good?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
Okay. So use of authentication information is our next section. And this is probably, I'm a security guy. I hate passwords. I'm guessing you're probably in the same boat. So authentication, there's, in the process of using your applications and things within the environment, you've got the identification, that's your username. Then that username needs to authenticate. It needs to prove that it is who they say it is, right? And so my username might be eFrancine, but I need to prove that to you. And usually it's a password, or, maybe it's a combination of things like a password and a PIN number, or a password and an email that I get, a password and whatever, right? So it depends on how we're doing it. Do we know of, and the problem with this one is if somebody else knows my authentication information, they can impersonate me. They can prove that they're me to the system. And an attacker would love to do that. So we want to just address this a little bit. Do you know of any places within the organization where people share passwords? So before we were talking about, the entire account, but do we know of any places where people are sharing passwords, that they've written down passwords, stuff like that?
That, I think we do a pretty good job of really targeting the importance of not sharing passwords and making sure that they're not in some visible place that people could find. So I think we do a pretty good job with passwords.
Awesome. Jordan, do you agree?
Yeah. We tell people not to share their passwords, and I guess I don't know, if they do it under the table, but they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as we continue down the path and build sort of the governance piece, make our policies, I think, more usable for us, less mechanical, it'll start to expose itself as we go on that path. But as long as right now we don't know of any, we're going to go with that. How about, we talked a while back about training and awareness for our employees. In that training and awareness, do you recall if there's any guidance on how to select good passwords, not to share them, not to write them down, where to put them, all that stuff? Do you know if there's any guidance in that, in the training and awareness?
Yeah, that's a part of our onboarding. So that again is something that we do a pretty good job at internally. I'm not sure how well we do with third-party associates, but just internally we do a really good job.
I mean, just recently, I believe IT made a change. We all had to change our passwords because they changed the amount of characters from 8 to 12.
How did that go over?
We didn't really like it. It was kind of annoying to me because I just finally memorized my 8-character password, and now I have to remember a 12 character. So I added a few numbers to it.
But kudos to you two as being leaders of this organization by setting an example of a 12-character password. In other organizations where I've worked, it's not uncommon for leadership to be, I think, the hardest to deal with. So, kudos for you guys for, even though it's a pain, hopefully over time that pain will be alleviated, but you're setting a great example, in my opinion.
Now they're talking about changing it to 16, so I don't know what's going to happen. And they want them to expire. But I guess can't be too careful.
Well,
yeah,
at the end of the day,
understood that. The whole expiration thing, because if you have a good password, you have a good password. Like, why do you need to change it if you know that it's a good password?
That's a good question. So at the end of the day, it's your call. So if they tell you whatever, this is your organization. At the end of the day, information security stops here with you guys. So it's okay. I mean, I just want to encourage, because I think it's unique in this organization that you're asking these questions, and unique in a good way. Because I think these are questions that you can ask they that are, telling you to move from 12 to 16 characters. Ask them why. We're all in this together. Now, Meg, to your point on why generally it's a good idea to expire passwords, for you to change them somewhat regularly, is sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we shared a password when we didn't mean to. Sometimes whoever we're giving when you're authenticating with somebody or an organization or a cloud app or something like that, you're giving them your password, right? You're typing that password into the field. If they don't handle that securely and they lose your password, so no fault of your own, it's on the other side. You may not know that, right? It's not uncommon for them not to share that with you. So you changing your password on a regular basis, it protects you more.
Yeah. We've
As much as we
recently,
complain about it, we embrace this because, like I said, we had a breach not that long ago, and so we're, as much as we don't like the password thing, we know that it has to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
we recently implemented a password management system. So I think that's helping people with creating their passwords and making sure they're different and of the right length and all that stuff.
yeah. And how's that? How is that going over when you hear from the employees? Is this one of their frustrations? Do you feel like they're playing by the rules?
I think we've put
I mean, I think,
enough in place to kind of force that a little bit. So,
yeah,
they don't have an option. They're forced to change their password on a frequency. The password management system is definitely something to get used to. And a lot of times when you start something like that, people aren't really used to using that, but it seems like people are kind of getting on board.
cool. Now, did you have some training that went along with the deployment of that password management system?
Yeah. Yeah. We set them up pretty good.
Now, if I recall, the training and awareness things are all sort of, HR is kind of the group that's responsible for that, right?
Yeah. And HR works closely with IT when it has more of that focus. Then they just kind of work together on the implementation of it.
Okay. Do you have any concerns if I ask them to share the training materials that they use?
No, not at all.
And I
Okay.
think it's a subscription. I think there's a subscription they do. There's something we added to the budget not long ago to pay for some sort of a training subscription, and I think they send phishing emails and stuff.
Okay. Very cool. Unsaved notes. Okay, stopping for a second. I don't use the notes section very much, but I should,
There you go.
I guess. Well, because I
That'll
just go
work.
by memory. I don't know what the hell, All right, back to work. So, can you think of a place within the environment, anything that you can access with a computer that doesn't require a login? Do you recall any places where or do I need to log in? I mean, it's kind of like this balancing act, right? I don't want to keep logging in, but if I was an attacker, can you think of any place where I could just come into the environment and not have to authenticate, not have to share a password and access something?
Good question. I don't think so. But any and all, those are strong words for me. So
Yeah.
I'm not, to answer that like from a definitive standpoint, I don't know. But
You mean
I
like
don't.
just get on a system without a password?
Or access an application, that maybe I shouldn't be able to access without a password. So maybe I've authenticated with a network already, but I can access something that should have maybe another password, or we don't want to split hairs too much. So I think at this point, if we can't think of a place where I can just plug in a computer and access your stuff, I think we're probably pretty safe. Now, in time, if we find out that this isn't true, we just come back and change it. So it's not a big deal if we, and if you think of something later, like, oh, because that's part of this exercise too, is you walk away and you go back to, using your computer on a daily basis, and you remember something that we talked about. Like, oh, I should tell Evan about that. Right. That's why I'm here too. So it's okay.
Yeah,
if you
I
can't
can only
think of
speak.
anything.
From my department, I can only speak that, QuickBooks has also its own passwords. So we log into the computer, and then to open up QuickBooks, we also have logins for that.
Okay. Good. I think in most cases, it's rare to answer this one. It's rare to have places or things in your environment, but sometimes there are obvious ones. And so we just ask the question anyway. How about account lockouts? Going back to the password thing, one of the frustrating things is, personally, I hate it when I go to log into the system and I got my password wrong. I try again and I got it wrong, and I try again and I got it wrong. And eventually, depending on where I'm trying to log into, I get this lockout. It can be 15 minutes sometimes.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's an entire day. Sometimes I have to call somebody to get it unlocked. Now, the reason we typically put those lockouts is it's to prevent an attacker from guessing people's passwords, right? Over and over and over again. When they do that and we have a lockout in place, that should call our attention to it, right? So it's kind of a preventative control. In your own environment, do you have that similar sort of thing that's either if you've been locked out, you have the frustration, but do you have account lockouts?
Yeah, we definitely do account lockouts.
Okay.
Yeah, it happens to Bob all the time. Very frustrating.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to talk to you about Bob.
Poor Bob.
I think, well, I don't know why he's still
He
here.
always gets used as an example.
I don't know why Bob is still here.
We keep telling him
Is
to
that-
use.
He's just bobbing along.
Bob is not providing value to the organization, and take this as a conviction of you, Meg, and your leadership. No, I'm just kidding. Might have gone a little farther right there.
I just feel so bad for Bob. Poor Bob.
Bob is the CEO's son.
Damn it, Bob. Just give him a toy computer and tell him it's a real one. He's got like those toy cash registers you had growing up. Just give him one of those for a computer.
Actually, it's not Bob. His name is really Seth.
Bob Seth. Or is it Seth Bob? Or is it Sob or Beth? Do you just combine those two?
Yeah, something.
Sob.
Sob, Beth. All right. Moving on from authentication. The next thing for us to talk about is encryption. And encryption, if there's one thing about information security that seems to intimidate people, even within our industry. So when I use the word encryption, if you have kind of a little shudder, it's
Yes.
kind of normal, right? So encryption, we use encryption to protect data that an attacker might have obtained, right? Either in transit from one point to another, or, they got into, a flash drive maybe that you're storing data on, or a hard drive that, maybe we got rid of that wasn't, properly sanitized, that kind of stuff. Do you know of any encryption requirements that we have documented to provide direction on where we should use encryption and where it's okay not to?
This is definitely out of my wheelhouse. I'm not sure on the encryption. So that we're going to have to speak to our IT director.
Well, I can speak from the accounting side that I don't know about it being documented, but I do know that we put in email encryption. So if I'm sending financial information, I have a way to send an encrypted email.
Okay. So you have solutions and probably some guidance, I would assume, on if you're doing these things, you should encrypt the data. And then here's the way to do that. So there's been some communication there, maybe not formal sort of policy. And we can go back and look at the policies, but even in the policies, if we're not necessarily using the policies, I'm gonna say that we don't have these things documented, but we do have some solutions that we make available to our employees. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. All right. How about mobile devices? Do you love nobody loves it. Well, maybe you do. Like your phone going off all the damn time. Just kidding. Nobody likes that. How about mobile device?
Is that like a preset thing, or is there supposed to be something specific I'm supposed to notice with my mobile phone? Doesn't it come to me already dealing with encryption?
Sometimes. There's different types of mobile devices. Tablets, iPhones, Android phones. I don't think you see any Microsoft phones really anymore. Kindle devices. There's lots of different types of mobile devices. And lots of different ways to encrypt it or not encrypt it. An Apple device, for instance, is encrypted by default. On an Android device, you can set it either way, right? So it really depends. And we use mobile devices all the time, right? When you think about emails that we're sending with attachments, sometimes we have access to cloud applications through our mobile device. So the first question around the security of mobile devices is around access control. Do we enforce or have any method of enforcing authentication with the mobile devices that we're using? So do you have to enter a PIN, a password, something to prove that you are who you say you are when you're using the mobile device?
Yeah, we have pins. We have to use a pin.
And do you know how long that pin is?
It is,
Okay. And do you know if that's enforced universally? Do all employees have to do that?
yes.
Okay.
Any
Very
employee
good.
that has one of those devices.
Okay. Do you know if an employee loses a mobile device that may have our data on it? Do you know of any process that we follow to take care of that? Things like, wiping the data, disabling the device,
I'm
anything
pretty
like
sure
that?
they can do that remotely.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we have that taken care of.
For sure, for the company provided ones.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yep.
you have
Only
company
those.
provided ones, and then where people bring their own as well?
I
Well,
think
people
some
use
people
their own
connect to
phone.
email on their own phone.
Yeah, they do that.
Okay.
We don't really police the people that use their own device but access the network. We don't really
Okay.
have a way to. So whether or not they have pins or passwords, that's really on their phone. We don't know.
Okay. IT this will be one that I'll probably follow up with IT, if you don't mind, just to
Okay.
make sure what controls we have in place. Because I'm also curious to know, I think for your benefit, the mixture of devices, right? iPhones versus Android devices, and what sort of controls we have in place. Uh, and I think just validating that, should offer you some peace, that, yeah, we're covered on this, because people lose mobile devices all the time. We just want to make sure that when they do lose a mobile device, that our data isn't going to be compromised.
No, I agree with that. That would be good to
Yeah.
follow up with them.
Okay, cool. How about remote work? So, especially post-COVID, we allow remote working here, right? We allow people to work from home or from the road.
Yes, we do.
Yes, people do work remotely.
Okay, do we
Some,
offer some? Yeah. So probably not all.
not
We have
all.
some people in the office. Okay.
Yep.
Do we have any guidance, any formal guidance on protecting our equipment, our data, access to our data, anything like that from remote locations or from home? Do we have any policies or guidance on that stuff?
Well, I know that after your computer's sitting idle for so long, it'll go to kind of a resting state where they have to redo their password or PIN. Is that what you're talking about?
That's part of it, for sure. Yeah, it's from a management perspective, and we'll get there as we continue to just put things into context and learn more about security here. We're looking more from like, what, as an employee of this organization, what are the expectations for me and how I
Mm-hmm.
protect all the things, like, for instance, and there's lots of things, we could do. And at the end of the day, what's right or wrong, kind of comes from management, right?
Right. Right.
It's what you're willing to accept as risk. So one of those things that you might put in a policy would be like kids. Kids are like viruses, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, personally, I never let my children touch any of my equipment, my work stuff, right? But in other organizations, that's permitted with certain controls in place. So in this organization, do you know if we prohibit non-employees, kids, spouses, prohibit them from using our equipment? Do we have any guidance on that?
We do, that definitely is a thing. They are prohibited. Whether or not people actually, we have no way of really knowing if a child accesses a parent's computer, but it's definitely prohibited from our perspective.
So it's prohibited from us as management. And I'm just reiterating how I understand it so that, we get it accurate. So it's prohibited, may or may not be documented in a policy, right? So maybe formalizing, solidifying that. And from what you
Yeah.
said, we probably lack the ability to enforce it anyway, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Do you have any ideas on that? We'd be interested in knowing.
Yeah, I'm a security guy. I got lots of it.
Yeah, when COVID hit, we just kind of ripped everyone. It was like a Band-Aid. We just kind of sent them home and figured it out, cobbled it together. And I do think we downloaded like a work from home policy from the internet to kind of figure some things out, but it never got really, formalized. And there's still a few folks that work from home, and I think there's some work to do there.
Well, and along those same lines, do we have any monitoring in place as far as of activities that employees are doing from remote locations, like connections to our VPN, how often they're connecting, what they're doing when they're connecting? Do we have any, as far as any mechanisms to do any of that stuff?
No, not as far as I know. Jordan, do you know of anything?
I know that IT can see who's connected. I remember asking him if Bob was connected the other day, and when he was working from home, and they did come back to me the next day or a couple hours and said that he was connected to the VPN. So I know they can see it.
Do you know if there are any audits that are conducted? Like who has, as far as who has remote access capabilities in the organization? Does everybody have that permission?
No, there's a VPN user. I know from the onboarding forms that you can select VPN user from the form, and that gives them the permission to log into the VPN. But tracking it along the way, I'm not sure.
Then I'll check with IT on this too, just to make sure that. That's the cool thing about doing these assessments is you get to hear your perspective, and then you get to hear the perspectives of others within the organization. Sometimes it's like enlightening, like, oh, I didn't know we were doing that. And it goes both ways. So it's kind of playing this role of in between is pretty fun for now. Yeah. And we can leverage that too, to make sure that the things that you guys want to do in the organization, the decisions that you make, that we do it right, that we implement it correctly as we're kind of bridging this gap. So
Great
good stuff.
How often would you think we should be reviewing those remote connections?
Ideally, it depends on how many people are remotely connecting and what they're doing. Generally, being a security guy who's maybe a little more risk averse, it would be continual. I would want to know at any time, who's connecting. And then with that, I would set patterns, so if somebody connects that doesn't normally connect, or they're connecting outside of specific hours, that should cause me concern. And I want to follow up on that. So good questions. All right. Well, that wraps it up for today. We've gotten through those sections. The next section we've got coming up that we can, pick it up where we left off is documented operating procedures. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. I've enjoyed the assessment thus far. Hopefully you guys are feeling the same way.
Yeah, no, it's going great. Fantastic.
Yeah, really good.
Really gets us thinking about just how we're doing everything. And
I feel like we should invite IT to the party.
We will. We'll make sure. Now your IT, I think, is outsourced, or is it internal, or is it a combination? Bob. Well, let me go back and re-answer these questions, because I think I already know the answer to them.
No, there is an IT team, but we also have an external IT company that helps them with some.
Okay, which is good, I think, because sometimes things get lost in translation from what the executives assume is happening with what's really happening. When I was saying that, bridging the gap, it's fun to take what you think is happening and either confirm it, which is always, it gives you more confidence as you're managing information security risk, or you assumed it's happening, but it's not happening. Those are great opportunities for, I think, better communication, and just auditing on a regular basis so that you have the assurance that what you're paying for is actually happening. So there's just good in all of this.
Yeah.
All
Fantastic.
right. What'd you guys think? Is all right?
Good. I love your flow of conversation. That your experience really shines through.
Thanks. Yeah, it's it's different when you're mocking up with, two people that aren't actually the CEO of whatever,
Right.
but because then when you're actually in that situation, it is even more natural.
Yeah.
And that just comes, when we started this series, it just comes with doing it. There's no other way to give you that confidence. There's no other way to give you just that natural conversation flow without you actually doing it. I wish we had a recording of my very first assessment. I bet you it'd be super fucking funny.
I'm trying my best to, when I'm the CEO or CFO, I'm trying my best to inject things that I've heard around the table with clients, when I'm talking to them. So I'm really trying to do that. What do they call that? The method acting. I'm really trying to get into that brain and spew out what I've run into.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really important as you're going through the assessment to focus on reading the room, maintaining that rapport, maintaining that partnership. Numerous times as we were talking, just setting executives, if that's the audience, just setting them at ease that it's normal not to know this stuff. So we want to take what you assume is happening and either validate that or prepare you to, I think, just be more involved. So, yeah.
How much do you want to expect? There's a common pattern in at least the scenario we're playing out that we got to go talk to IT. We got to go talk to IT. How much would you expect from a typical assessment that you have follow-up work to do? And how do you kind of plan for that?
So usually, it depends on the organization. Sometimes we'll plan up front. We've created information gathering forms before to who's responsible for what so that we can schedule the right interviews with the right people. Sometimes in smaller organizations, there's just, it's a lump of we don't know who does any of this stuff.
Would you typically try to have them all around the table for this? Or would you kind of expect, okay, this is just you two. We're going to plan on interviewing this role, this role, this role.
Yeah. And usually I would start with IT. I wouldn't start with the executives because I want the executives to feel like I really, really value their time. I know you guys are busy as hell. And so I want to be focused when I'm talking to you. So in reality, I would probably start with IT or whoever that is. If they have a security person or if they have an IT director, whoever, and then I'll answer as much of this as I can. And because they'll be much more open about, we don't have a policy for that. No, because they're the ones that are the receivers of that direction. And then where I have gaps, I might want to confirm that with executives. Then I'll go into the executive meeting with just a list of, maybe 5 to 10 points that I just want to cover with them. And it might be, we'll get through it in half an hour, or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the executives don't know any of the tactical stuff. So when you go back and, you're asking about, whether teleworking activities are monitored and audited periodically, what executive is really going to know the answer to that? Whereas the IT person or group, they'd be like, no, we don't do that. And then, that's why I start with IT. Well, good discussion, you guys.
All right. Yeah.
So who's doing it next week? And Jordan, you're back to the CvCISO role.
Jordan's
back to a little old stumble along.
But what I want listeners to maybe focus on is how much more comfortable Jordan's going to be next week compared to where we started this.
Put that kind of pressure on me?
No, it's not pressure, because I think it'll prove the point that the first time you were kind of nervous, you were hesitating a lot, but I'm excited to see next Friday because it's going to be better. Because
next Friday,
that point, the more you do it.
Next Friday is the day after Thanksgiving.
There's no Thanksgiving here. There's no Thanksgiving here in Mexico, man.
Let me say, I am not available. I will be at a Badger game.
These Americans are so damn hard to work with.
Dinner on a tailgating party. So we'll have to do it a different time. We'll have to schedule
Yes, gringo.
I'll be standing in line to buy another flat screen TV.
Yeah. What's the politically correct way to say Black Friday? Is there one, or do we still call it Black Friday?
There isn't. Everybody still says Black Friday. Leave it at that.
Okay, good. Well, I just want to, I don't want to offend anybody. So I want to Play by the rules.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
don't know
well,
what else you'd call it.
Friday after Thanksgiving,
Yep.
go broke Friday, overspend
Save money
Friday,
Friday.
Not
Impulse.
White Friday? No, that's not good either.
impulse buying Friday,
Yeah.
be something else.
Drive your husband crazy Friday.
Hide
right.
the credit card bill.
It's the other way here because I'm already an impulse buyer. So when I used to go to Black Friday sales, man, I just come home with so much shit. And Meryl's be like, "Who's this for?" Like, me. Who's this for? Oh, that's for me too. Did you shop for anybody? I got you some socks. She's just like, the socks weren't even on sale, idiot. I'm like, I know.
Well,
That's why I got
they get you with that. It's like deal. Not a deal, but it's like there. It sucks.
That's
Well,
why
yeah,
I got
'cause-
you talk.
As I'm walking through the aisles and walking through everybody, and I'm looking at the cart going, oh my God, all this shit's for me. I got to get something for my wife too. Well, there's socks. Let's grab that. Put it in there. Yeah.
She likes warm feet.
Oh my gosh.
So no Black
right,
Friday
guys.
shopping for me.
All
Have
right.
a wonderful, wonderful week,
Happy
everyone.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Take the time to think about the things that you're thankful for in your life. Really, it helps to
Yeah.
it brings contentment. And contentment is healthy. Out of contentment comes joy.
This will actually be playing on Black Friday. So yeah, so this is continue the
Amen.
thanks from yesterday.
Continue.
Exactly. All right. Love you guys. Take care.
Bye.
All right. See ya.